In Electrobim, we have the project options, and this is where you control all the various settings you have for Electrobim in your project. And there's a lot of options, and we will take a look at all of these. When you make these changes, you then have to figure out how to get these changes to other projects, because when you make a change to all of this, you're going to get this set up once. You want to have it all configured for how your company likes to work, and you don't want to have to make these changes in every project. There's really two ways you can handle that. One, you can open up your template file, run this command, the project options command in your template file, and make the changes there. And then that template will have the settings in it, and then all projects based upon that template will have your settings. The other option is to use the customization, export, and import commands. So you would find the project, you would get everything set up properly there. Then you can run the export command. When you run this, you have choices for what you are actually exporting and where you're exporting it to. So you give it a file location that you're going to export, and then choose what you want to export, the various option settings, and then also some wire sizing and transformer settings. And you can save that to a file. And then in future projects, you run the customization import command. So you take that file that you've exported it, and then you import it into other projects. So that's just two different ways you can do the template, or you can do the export import. One benefit to the export import is that you can then pull that into projects that have already started. Otherwise, if you use the template, you have to make sure to start with that template. And then once the project started, there's no way to update it. So the export import gets around that limitation with the templates. So if you have a template, you can set that up. There's probably a place for everyone to be using export import as well. Let's take a look at the circuit description options. There are two choices for how you handle your circuit descriptions. You can have Revit handle them, or you can have Electrobim handle them. A lot of people come to our software and they have a way that they've got their circuit descriptions working that they really like. And so they want to keep using that. And this is actually the default. So if you open up our software and you start using it on a project and you haven't made changes, it's going to be using the Revit circuit descriptions by default. So we're not going to mess with your descriptions. However, you can change that and use our Electrobim circuit descriptions instead. So we have a slightly different way of handling it than Revit. Revit very much focuses on the circuit having a description. We focus on the devices having descriptions, which then feed into the circuit. So it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about it. I'm not going to say one's better or worse. They're just different. So if you want to use our way, you can change it here. We have a whole training on how the circuit descriptions work. So if you want a complete rundown on how our circuit descriptions, go watch that other training. We're not going to do that because this is just focused on the options. If you are using our circuit descriptions, one of the options is whether you include a room name in that circuit description. And that can be yes or no. This is the default for the project. So a lot of these options are project defaults, and then you can override it at specific spots, in this case, in the circuits themselves. So this will be the default, and then you can override that default as to whether you want to include your room names by default or not. What this ends up looking like is if you're using Revit circuit descriptions and you run our circuit edit command, and you take a look at that circuit, you'll see that the description is fixed. We don't let you change it, and we say it's controlled by Revit. So if you want to change the description, you need to go do that through the Revit UI that you've been using in the past. If we change that option to using Electrobim circuit descriptions, now we show you the description, but now we have our prefix, our suffix, our replacement, the option for whether you're including that room name, again, that project default, which is set in the options, and then the ability to override that. So if you use the Electrobim circuit descriptions, you now have all these additional options, and you control the circuit description through our software rather than through Revit. If it's locked to Revit, that'll also show up in a couple places with panels and some other places. So and we'll call it out controlled by Revit. You won't be able to change it. So that's how you change that from Revit to Electrobim controlling the descriptions.